All righty, folks. Welcome back from lunch. Hope you enjoyed that break. Quick reminder, a little housekeeping before we jump in. There's a question and answer box at the bottom of the screen. So throughout the presentation, we encourage you all to ask as many questions detailed as you can, and we'll be doing a Q&A at the end with all of the project architects and subs and team members of the project. So fill it in. We love the chat throughout as well. We'll be monitoring the chat in case a question accidentally makes its way in there, but we do love the feedback, so keep in all the messages. We definitely love the interaction. And this next project, it is my pleasure to introduce. We actually have two buildings as part of the Thacher School campus, and it's really exciting to get to have this project on the tour, and virtual tour this year really does help us have more projects that we really couldn't have on a normal year, where we're trying to get a lot of people to this site. So being far away and kind of tucked away in the mountains, this was a really great candidate for the virtual tour, and we're really happy to have them on. So this next project, designed by Blackbird Architects, is the Gates Building and Dining Pavilion of the Thacher School. Blackbird Architects was founded in Santa Barbara by Ken Radke in 1995. And the most important thing to Blackbird is to collaboratively create memorable spaces where people, communities, and nature thrive. Both of these projects that you'll be seeing today heighten the connection between Thacher's unique landscape and culture through iconic, transformative, and ecological experiences. These two buildings were designed with integrated sustainability features and are anticipated to receive LEED Gold certification from the U.S. Green Building Council. So can't be more excited for that. It's my pleasure to introduce the Blackbird team. It will be the founder, Ken Radke, to introduce the team. So hand it off to you now, sir.
Thanks, Cash, and thank you to everyone for being here today. My first most important thing is to express gratitude to attendees, and as well to, most importantly, to the team. I'll introduce the Blackbird project team, and that includes me, Ken Radke, Adam Sharkey, Elena Fraser. I want to give a special acknowledgement to Elena Fraser, who has been orchestrating the sort of assembly of this webinar, if you will, and show and tour. It's harder than we thought it was going to be to do it this way. So hopefully everyone has good humor about it. Elena is a leader in our office. She's a leader in the field. She's a leader of the AIA, and she's really someone to keep your eye on, and she's been doing a great job. Ray Twyford, James Kyle are here. And I also wanted to acknowledge sort of like shadow team members, which are the clients, which are frankly most important team members of all. And we see them as collaborators. I know that Rod Leard is here. He was the project manager on the Thacher side. Ed Bennett and the administrative leadership at Thacher was there. I believe that Joel Weiss from Crane School may be attending, and maybe Kate Parker from Kate School and City College. These are clients that we're working with and collaborators. And I really want to acknowledge that nothing good ever happens by an individual or even by one firm. So design team side, that's our mentions, Elena.
Yeah, and just to continue the introductions, Cash mentioned it previously, but we have Ann Kale from Ann Kale Architectural Lighting, who was the lighting designer for both projects at Thacher, joining us today. Thank you, Ann. We also have Sage and Jasper from Taylor Siphon Structural Engineering, again, structural engineers on both projects. Thank you both for joining. Susan Van Atta, landscape architect for both projects, also here today. And then a quick mention to Dasso, who's a sponsor, as are Ann Kale and Taylor Siphon for this event. Dasso is a bamboo siding product that we used extensively on both projects, and we'll point that out later in the tour.
So if I were to try to summarize what these projects are about and what we want to highlight and talk about today, it's not written here on the slide. It's really about our work, which is making connections between landscape and culture. And if you are thinking about the process of design or the process of learning or the process of teaching or the process of play, what you're really doing is creating and strengthening connections between an existing landscape that we see here now and a landscape and a culture that we envision. So I know that's a very abstract notion, but these kinds of connections is what it's all about, and seeing the world as a landscape. This is the larger landscape that these Thacher projects are located, which is the Ojai Valley. And the Thacher School has been located at the eastern end of that valley for 130 years. If we zoom in on it, you can see it's a classic sort of evolutionary school plan that has happened over a long time. And that leads to interesting challenges. The first step in our process was the notion of, we can just keep going in. This is looking at the campus center here. Originally, the idea was to renovate the existing dining hall. So we'll start with the dining hall, which is the heart and soul of the school. And quickly it became apparent that just a renovation wasn't going to work. And so you can see this. Yeah, you can see at the center of the school, that's the existing dining hall and the existing center of campus. It's surrounded by an arc of trees and an arc of sort of campus central cultural and community venues and facilities. These are down valley views that are just glorious, and you'll see those as we go along. Next. That 3D model, yeah. So this is the structure that originally was contemplated to be renovated, and these historic photos kind of show that the Thacher School was originally founded in the 1890s in order to connect boys in a boarding school atmosphere to a ranch-like environment, and still to study all of those classic boarding school topics. You'll also see here this tennis court in the lower left. So it's an elite school, always has been, but in a super rustic and sort of unique way with horses. Here, it's like, just go to that one. You have to really appreciate this. You've got the T there, which is sort of a classic boarding school T-shirt that we would still see, horses and a bunch of kids that look like vaqueros or something. So that the notion was to have this rustic atmosphere and to learn not just through books, but through experience. And this is an updated view. It was a boys' school through the 60s, and there's a certain sort of history and nostalgia about that, and there's a certain sort of progress and overcoming of that segregation as you move into current days. The kind of things that you could do back then were dangerous, and play was considered to be more part of learning. And I think over time, society has gotten more conservative. And so the notion of learning through projects, learning through risk, learning through activity is gaining momentum. And you can kind of see this is a Thacher School activity now. The heart and soul of a school. If you think about the process of breaking bread together, it's the classic sort of connector activity. And this overview project kind of shows you the chaparral setting and the outcome and these connections as we go between the landscape palette. The Thacher Hills building, this is where they originally lived, ate, and learned in this actual building that was over time converted into the dining hall. This is how they used to hang out. Next. This is the building today, and it has, it was the hope for outcome was a renovation and addition to this building, and that became apparent that it was not a viable solution. So then if you look at the next slide, it was the problem that needed solving was how do you add to this landscape without blocking this incredible down slope view? And in the campus plan, these tennis courts and this sort of grass field were in the center of campus, but a little bit not necessarily a center of daily activity. Adam's going to show us here the existing situation. And if you kind of toggle back and forth there, you can see there are these 6 tennis courts and an underutilized like sloping grass area. And then we basically created an arcing flat spot here for all of this to happen. This central spot there is still the heart and soul of the school, but we've added a campus green where all kinds of activities take place between the inside and outside. So next, just by the way, that this kind of campus planning tool at the model level, you're always trying to sort of heal, augment, enhance the campus function, which is really all about movement and so forth. Classically in these spaces, the people who go here every day navigate with ease, and visitors get lost. And so I think we've improved that with the addition of these new features. Let's go ahead.
Hello, everybody. This is James Kyle, project designer with Blackbird Architects. This is a diagram showing the site. We have an outdoor communal lawn space that was created central to this new complex of our dining building and landscape. There's a strong connection to the original heart of campus, this pergola space circled up next to the Hills building and Commons building. As Ken was mentioning, it's very important to preserve the views from that area as well as the Hills building, second floor. And so the orientation of the building and the landscape elements created this fan shape in order to preserve those views. Next. The new dining pavilion faces and connects these outdoor spaces and new landscape to enhance the dining in the garden concept and the indoor-outdoor connection to nature, which is integral to the Thacher experience. The western interior view from the dining hall reveals and enframes the majestic mountains and down valley views. The heart of campus is expanded and enhanced with the new dining facility and open spaces, creating a transformative and positive space. The architectural partie is expressed as 2 distinct but connected spaces and forms. The kitchen and servery is an understated form with a lower height signifying its secondary nature and presence as it relates to the lofty, articulated, and transparent dining pavilion. Next. Here we see the floor plan showing the main entry and lobby, which is not number 8 there. That connects straight into the dining room, which seats 300 students and the Thacher community at large. Connected through a portal, number 7, is the servery and exhibition kitchen, number 6. These are the 2 front of house spaces. From there, as Ken drew arrows through the building, that's the western view that we're talking about. And so that further left arrow highlights, and we'll see that in photos here shortly. And then there's covered outdoor spaces pretty much on all 3 sides of the dining hall. So we'll jump into the model and see a couple of views. The first one starting from this pergola space, the heart of campus. Here we can see in the model these precious Western Valley and mountain views, and how we're able to preserve those by keeping the building lower than you are at that pergola level. So you go down a series of stairs to get to this. The entry on this side connects you to that historic heart of campus, and these roof forms, as Ken has highlighted with these blue lines, serves to kind of connect to and enhance and echo the mountain forms in that view beyond. You'll also see the low green roof over the servery, which is there to blend and enhance the landscape view as you look across that roofscape. So the roof was very considered in the overall design. Let's go to the dollhouse view. So this is a view where we take the roof off and we look inside the building just to get a better understanding of the space and the dining room, how it connects to the servery, and then the outdoor spaces surrounding the dining hall. Also the connections to the other buildings on campus through a series of new pathways. This is a long section going east to west through the dining room. And here it's worth noting this articulated and lofty roof and ceiling, these covered outdoor spaces that kind of seamlessly go through the transparent windows, and the overall connection of indoors to outdoors, which we'll see again here in this next section. Here we see, again, the dining pavilion and the servery and their adjacencies to each other. You see the roof form, pitch and step and break, similarly to the mountain forms beyond. We're getting a peek now of the view through that western window. And then on the left-hand side, there are these very tall sliding glass doors that completely open up, 48 feet of opening to bring the outdoors in and the indoors to the outside. It was mentioned earlier that the building was designed to meet LEED Gold. Some of the sustainability features include an 82% reduction in energy use, solar hot water collectors on the roof of the kitchen, vegetated roof, and natural daylighting, as well as innovative mechanical systems that provide all of the necessary air conditioning, air exchanges, and even the option for these large open doors and windows to provide natural ventilation on days where it's suitable. As we work and design and collaborate, the material palette is a very important part of the design process, and these show how we come about with these design ideas and these material choices. And in this project, you'll see, naturally weathering wood, sustainable and durable materials like this Daso fused bamboo rain-clad siding, weathering steel, which is left to patina, board marked concrete, and local stone. And this all complements the Western vernacular buildings on the Thacher campus. The building is nestled into the site, the tree canopy, and geologic forms of the mountains beyond. The servery and kitchen, again, you can see nestled into this existing oak woodland on the left-hand side of the photo. There's an expansive green roof. There's a vine-covered north elevation, and this all helps to merge the building into the landscape. The green roof was designed by Susan Van Atta, landscape architect. It's 6,000 square feet. It's biodiverse, native, planted, and drought tolerant. It provides an attractive roofscape visible to the main campus administration offices on that second level of the Hills building. It reduces peak stormwater runoff and is a high performance insulator for the kitchen and servery. A lowered covered outdoor communal space is created here. It steps down and it's a foreground element in this expansive view. It's worth noting there's a structural accomplishment here by Taylor and Siphon to create this large uninterrupted cantilevered roof over this space. This is a view from the pergola at sunset. You'll see here the inviting entry plaza with seat walls, planters that all support kind of informal pre-meal or pre-event gatherings and just life at the Thacher School. This is a strong and iconic entry. It is magnetically open and inviting and memorable. It was transformative for the Thacher community, and you'll see the transparency that goes all the way through the entry to that western window and the mountains beyond.
And I wanted to just chime in on this slide as well. It's iconic in many ways and it overlaps. You see the work of the structural engineer, which sometimes shows and sometimes doesn't. You see the work of this low roof on the right, which is overhung by oaks, and we've got a native planted roof that's visible. All 5 sides of this project are visible at all times of the day because of the sloping terrain. So, north, south, east, and west faces of the building, as well as the roof, is visible from many vantage points. You see the lighting designer's work here, which is she makes it look easy, as well, the work of the client, the design team, all the engineers, everyone just really working together and collaborating to make such a memorable experience. James, I think you're on for this.
I think, yeah, this is one of our last photographs here. This is the interior that completely opens to the communal lawn and provides space for gathering, play, and major events. The central hearth is visible. It emanates out into the landscape, and the stepping roof planes, again, echo these mountains in the distance.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ray Twyford, architect at Blackbird. Here we start at the heart of the dining room, the fireplace. Backing through this monumental door that opens out to a new campus green, an indoor-outdoor connection through a 48-foot wide opening. The palette, naturally oxidizing core tin, Dasso siding, board form concrete, stone, glass. On the west patio here, there's a transparency through the dining hall that blurs the line between indoor and outdoor. See the floating roofs that echo the mountains in the distance. The green roof is nestled into the oaks, blends into the site. Susan Van Atta designed the striations on the green roof to pull from the hills beyond as well. The green space positioned to preserve down valley views from the historic building and spaces above. And we'll start to get an overview of the project that shows an overall palette and how it merges with the campus. Building lighting by Ann Kell on display here, designed to be soft, warm, and inviting for both indoor and outdoor spaces. Enhancing one of Thacher's greatest assets, its indoor-outdoor campus experience. Expansive glazing and the 48-foot wide pocket doors foster outdoor dining and strong connections to site and nature. Doors essentially opened by a single person. Generally, doors are kept open for breakfast and through dinner. Monumental glazed pocketing doors completely disappear, fully merging indoor and outdoor. A variety of furniture supports formal dinners and casual breakfasts on the couch, around the coffee table. Lighting complements Western vernacular traditions. Generous shade porches invite outdoor activities throughout the day and seasons. Here, the contemporary steel truss detailing, custom designed by Taylor and Siphon engineers, balanced by warmth and tradition of a vaulted timber roof. Poplar lattice, perforated wood ceilings, walnut walls, stone hearth, and oak flooring inspired by rustic Thacher history. Interior acoustics tuned for effortless and enjoyable conversations around the table and large group presentations from the hearth.
And it's worth emphasizing that acoustic aspect to the project, which couldn't be more important to both of these projects. In this case, it was about dampening of acoustic reverberation in the space. We've all experienced that. And all systems of the building sort of overlap here to make that happen. And we'll catch up.
Here's the servery, lit by a monumental skylight that floods the space with tempered natural light. Pocketing doors between servery and dining close for formal events and are open for cooking on display. Exhibition cooking stations connect students, staff, and food, further strengthening community connections, all enhanced by Ann Kell's lighting.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam Sharkey with Blackbird. I'm going to show you briefly just in Matterport. I know some great work was done by AIA and others to sort of get this as a tool that for all the projects on the tour. So we're just going to look briefly, and I know people have a link to this where they can kind of tour around and see the building on their own. We're inside and the main dining hall, looking back towards the entry. And the connection in and out from outside, and then this large open connection to the servery. You can jump forward, so I'm going to click in and move into the servery. As Ray was just showing in the photography, we've got the nice natural light, both from the skylight as well as our clear story windows. I'm going to pan over and move towards the exhibition kitchen. These were shot during the summer, and Thacher was able to have a school year last year throughout COVID. So the exterior shots you'll see here, they had tents that they put up on the main campus green and others. So the landscape is not the same as in the photos, but should be back to that soon as they kind of take what making of covered outdoor space all over and get back to normal. I'll look over and just see, looking back, there was a lot of interesting graphics. There was old historic photos that were put into the servery space and other things to kind of enliven. Maybe we'll jump through that wall, look back from the kind of fireplace area at the hearth. We can rotate over. Matterport is interesting because we can kind of look in at details and things. So we can see this acoustic ceiling and these sort of trusses. We can jump to the far end and sort of see back to the main body of the dining room, as well as pan and look out from here to the large covered outdoor shaded dining and to kind of views beyond. So there's many more spaces people can explore with this, but this is just a little taste. And through Q&A, if there's specific things people want to see or talk about, we can come back.
This is not Photoshop. This is real. Connection to landscape, connection between culture, experience, site. At any school, that's what it's all about. It's really a place where people spend so much time that it becomes a home for everyone who's there. Moving on. The Gates building at the Thacher School, an academic beehive. It's a kind of a 2D, 3D, 4D place in space that's replicates a landscape, but is kind of like a warehouse for rough and tumble project-based learning, as well as very conventional learning and activities. The history of the Thacher School, again, if you look back, it was about learning through experience, horses, ropes, slides, falling off of stuff, and I think that all of us should see that creative process in what we do, whether it's learning, teaching, designing, building, creating, collaborating. It really should have that collaboration and fun and risk to it. The original task was to try to adaptively reuse this building from the 60s. There was poor insulation, poor mechanical, no acoustic isolation between spaces, low spaces, no windows, and eventually the school realized that the adaptive reuse of this was, although desirable, was not feasible. So we built a 1.5-story building in the same spot. So then if we see that in a model, you can kind of see where it is there. And I want to just note, every project has this sort of like aspect of adaptively reusing a site. A school project is always an evolution. And this is an academic core here at the Thacher School. And with sort of a library and other spaces on the lower right, and a new sort of project-based learning that is 40% of the school's academic space is now in one spot, which is a big obligation. There's an important campus movement aisle that goes like this, and an existing movement line that was preserved and continues through the building. The notion here at the dining, as well as at the Gates building, of transparency and visual connection from outside to in, even for passersby, connects people to these exploratory, playful, rough and tumble learning, and just hanging out and learning in a fun atmosphere condition. Next. Here you can see the, it's interesting, the building, if I just mark this quickly, it's 1 story up here and it's 2 stories over here. And that was the existing situation. The existing building had that. And so the building spans 2 different levels and has at-grade connections in all directions. And if we transition to the next slide, Elena, who was a project leader of this project, will take us through some really interesting features.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Happy to chime in now, finally. So important things to point out at this sort of site plan level. Ken was mentioning in the 3D model, this really important north-south axis and how this building is that terminus. That's this axis that we see here, here, and here that was preserved throughout the project. And one of those actually goes directly through the building. And we've heard from people on campus that people really shortcut their circulation on campus through the building. Also just want to emphasize how porous this building is. So these yellow dots represent just a handful of the at-grade doors that go in and out of the building. I think in total there's something like 30, whether they're swing doors or overhead garage doors. So again, a building edge that's really diffuse with super strong connections to landscape. Looking quickly at the lower level floor plan to just talk you through some of the driving concepts here. So there's a really interesting and exciting mix of programmatic spaces that are housed in this building. On the lower level alone, we have a robotics, tech shop, ceramic studio, a lecture hall for 80, photography, a micro classroom, and at the center of it all, a giant collaborative fabrication garage. And this was really a driving force. We'll see this again in the upper level, a central collaborative space that all other spaces surround. They open up onto with large pocketing doors. They have visual connection, physical connection to these spaces on the inside. Similarly, one of the mottos, I guess you could say, for the building was an outdoor space for every indoor space. So in the same way that each space connects onto this central collaborative core, each space also has direct connection to multiple outdoor learning and workspaces at grade.
Elena, I'll just add the utter porosity of the building is sort of mandated because the Thacher School prior to this building had no hallways. Their entire campus was circulated exterior, and they were scared to have an set of interior spaces. And so the solution to that was porosity. And then spaces like this could be understood more as a courtyard that gets moved through and around, just like you move through the exterior spaces of a classic California school. So think of these as courtyards and spaces to be moved through and experienced, creating connections randomly, seemingly between activities and people.
Yeah, this diagram just reinforcing that. So the circulation going from top to bottom on our screen is this really important campus-wide circulation that literally cuts through the center of the building on the lower level. And then this east to west connection where we've got large openings that can fully connect the rear of the lecture hall all the way out to the landscape. And we'll see that really clearly in upcoming drawings. Moving to the upper level, a similar arrangement and really fun, eclectic, interdisciplinary set of spaces. We have a science lab, painting studio, drawing studio, faculty office, 4 general purpose classrooms, a micro classroom, and then of course, again, this all important collaborative core flanked here on the south by this terraced lecture, sort of informal lecture space. This diagram, again, same as the lower level, all spaces visually and physically connecting into this collaborative core or courtyard. And again, at grade connections to one-to-one, indoor space to outdoor space. On the right-hand side or the east, we have the at-grade patios. On the west, as Ken mentioned previously, that's two-story space, so we've got some upper-level patios. The little yellow arrows in the diagram, there are a couple spaces where you know, an at-grade connection wasn't possible, and so those are given just monumental glazing that gives them fantastic views out to nature. And again, we'll see that more in the upcoming photos. Just quickly, major movement lines through the upper level. Again, even at this upper level, this north-south campus axis, it continues, as well as an east-west one. Jumping back to the model, you can sort of zoom in a little bit and see the building. We didn't point it out previously, but the general concept that you even see here in the roof, you know, that central space, the roof material is actually different than the surrounding spaces. So again, at every level, sort of highlighting the significance of this central space, top to bottom. Next. An upper level dollhouse view of the plan. Again, you can see sort of that really lively collaboration courtyard at the upper level, offering, you know, flexible breakout space. There's fun, flexible furniture, and all of those surrounding art studios, classes, science lab. On the lower level, we can sort of toggle between, again, we'll see some fun videos of this, but the lecture hall can either be completely closed off from the adjacent fabrication garage, which with these giant pivoting doors, they actually each weigh about 7,000 pounds, but are able to be moved by a single person. So the lecture hall can either connect, you know, out into fabrication and then all the way to the outside, or it can be an insular space to host an important event. This is a north-south section that cuts through the building. Just a few things to quickly point out. You see this two-story terrace lecture space flanked by a timber curtain wall that really just brings light and views into both levels of the building. These sloping shed roofs that are supported by long span glulam beams give clear story window that also brings light into the center of the building. And again, down below, we see this lecture hall opening up onto the fabrication garage space. An east-west section through the building. Here you see those clear stories that I mentioned in that other section, again, bringing light and view into the center of the building. And then this really important east-west connection from, you know, burned-in lecture hall way at the back through fabrication garage, out a 40-foot wide opening, and then into landscape.
Orchestrating experience. You can see it's an improvised feeling structure. The school is improvised in its sort of historical forms, its ranch type forms, and this sort of sense that it might have almost happened over time is part of this, and it's also just a sort of an improvised jazz response to the site, the spaces, and the culture. This palette, this is you can see the lower entry and the front, which is synonymous with the ceramics, you know, which occupies the corner. And this display of activity, as opposed to architecture with a capital A, or or closing things off. That's the identity. The identity of this place is the activity, the experience, the community, the exploration. You can see the spanning the terrain from a 2-story on the left to a 1-story on the right. Timber facade. Facing the west is in essence a very, very large outdoor space where projects live out here, big projects, boats and machines and robots and crazy stuff. That's as it was desired. They wanted it to be a rough house, to be a rough and tumble exploration. It's a low-tech building, but detail rich. You will see, again, this is outside the physics building, physics classroom, and you can see that hangar door, and they go out there and they teach and learn out there constantly, every day. This is at the entry to the upstairs, and this wasn't staged. Interestingly, we just happened to be there when on a school day, and these kids are in a class at the moment. It's a classroom activity of some sort. It may be a test or something. Again, none of these were actually staged. It's interesting because we showed up to do photography and they were doing their thing. The connection to the landscape is amazing. And this is what teenagers do. This is how they like to think and work. And even if they're not collaborating, they like to sit by each other and work together. And that's very important. The connection to site, terrain, and landscape is really critical. It's the thing we're most proud of.
I'll just quickly mention the photo sequence that you saw on the bottom there was a series of barn doors that, again, in the sort of spirit of general flexibility in the building, those things can open and close to separate, this space from the adjacent space.
This little video, again, we just showed up. This was not staged. We took all these photos and they were kind of like captured candidly or accidentally. And then we realized that it was just documenting how it's like waves that come in and go out in all different ways in these spaces. Next.
So this is the view you have when you arrive at the upper level of the building. Again, you're sort of at the top of this terraced lecture. A few things to point out. There's a 16-foot by 9-foot interactive display that actually has a camera. Sometimes as people move up and down this space, what's displayed changes. So real fun interactive space. That's where in that last video, someone was doing a virtual reality class that they actually held here, and we're using that screen. You see all the way down into ceramics, over to the right, again, through this collaborative courtyard, all the way out through the science lab. And as Ken was mentioning, these are entirely candid shots. So the school really they open this thing up, these sort of overhead doors are open all the time. Should also just mention some of the fun furniture, which Blackbird selected with Thacher. These cubes in the foreground, for example. There's a sort of hard outer shell of plywood that can stack and become tables or seating or used for display. And nestled inside of them are leather foam cubes. So leather, a little bit of a throwback to some of the Thacher vernacular, and so those get pulled out, and then you've also got soft seating. So these are sort of exist and live throughout the building and obviously move around with some frequency. Should just mention the lighting in this space. Again, Ann Kale, the designer. So here we've got a sort of fun but quiet array of these barn-like fixtures, sort of modern barn-like fixtures. that complement the natural light that's happening in this space. There's a lot of very subtle and sophisticated controls that are happening as well to really, bring the best lighting, floor lamps also throughout this space. Here's a view looking north as you're making your way up that terraced lecture. There's actually a midpoint connection that you can go in and outside of the building. And again, those mountains in the background there, just really present in the space.
Elena, I just wanted, on the last slide, as well as on this one, I'm going to circle all of the wall size doors. So they're everywhere. And each door takes less than a minute to open or close.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention, we love that Thacher, generally, these doors are open, which we think is fantastic, so when people are in the art studio that you see to the right, anyone walking in the building can see what they're doing. But if there's the need to isolate a room, which is often necessary in a school setting, those things close, they're double glazed. Each room is both, can be completely isolated acoustically and visually. There's also shades that come down at all glazing. So again, really being able to tune the level of connectivity or sort of introvert and focus that any space wants. Here we are on the other side of that hub, sort of looking back at the entry. I think it's interesting to note that collection of students and a teacher there on the terrace lecture hall. Again, that was just happening, teacher decided to teach a class there. So I think that the nature of learning spaces is really changing, and Thacher's at the forefront of that. And I think this building really supports those education goals. The lower level sort of corollary, if you will, to that upper level collaborative courtyard space on the lower level is this fabrication garage, which again, it's that central space at the middle that all these other spaces open up onto. You can tell like the building character and sort of interior character is pretty different down here. Up above was a little bit more refined, exposed structure, but minimal and sort of elegant. Down here, it's meant to be a backdrop for messy making. So we've got really durable floors, exposed concrete, plywood walls, exposed trusses, cord reels above, cord power on the floor, and exposing the structure allows people hang things from it. They're designed to accommodate that. Whiteboards everywhere, and again we're seeing this little collection on the bottom of the screen of those big pivoting walls that can either separate the lecture hall from this space or can be opened up to join them. This is a view in the lecture hall. You mentioned this previously, I think, but the lecture hall is designed to accommodate 80, which is not the most common number of people that a Thacher class has. This is a more typical class size, but the arcing desks, the acoustics in the room, and other design choices make it a really friendly and accommodating space for even a small class, which we're seeing here.
There's a whole, on that note, there's a whole note for educators who are orchestrating what happens on campus, the notion of utilization, like what percentage of the day is a space used. They had a 60 to 80 person lecture hall at Thacher that was used, maybe had 10% utilization. This space is in the 70 to 80% or something like that, I hear. And it's because people want to go in there, whether the class is small or large, but it also attracts the notion of a larger class that doesn't meet every day with 80 students, but they have a bunch of like once a week groups that can meet. So this kind of flexible, improvised seeming collection and gathering for the school.
Yeah, I mean, one of the driving forces behind these large pivoting doors was a similar notion. So there was an interest and desire to be able to host robotics competitions and robotics events, which require footprints actually much larger than the one that we're sort of seeing here. But as a way of not creating just a big empty space in the building, the opening up of the pivoting doors allows an event like that to sort of straddle the two spaces and make use of, you know, the sort of necessary flat area at the bottom of this stepping lecture hall, and again makes a room that would otherwise potentially be empty most of the time really a sort of collaborating space in the building.
Sometimes people who are working on a project out there in the maker space actually break out to the lecture hall to work on things. This little video shows three transforming walls. One is this hangar door type, again, low tech, barn door type, literally like 2 bypass barn doors here, low tech. These take no time, but when that door is closed, it's spatial and acoustic isolation, visual isolation that's tuned. And then the next one is kind of, each of these doors weighs 5,000 or 6,000 pounds, and they're actually storage spaces with whiteboard on both sides. So when it's closed, you have spatial and acoustic isolation between the lecture hall and the maker space. When it's open, it's just a space maker.
The next few images are just a collection of photos that show some of these sort of beehive spaces, if you will, that surround these collaborative cores. Here's an image from the painting studio, a real sort of loft-like space, high ceilings. Again, lighting super important in an art studio space. There's adjustable track lighting that has an uplit component, down lighting, and also, you know, the ability to sort of focus on wall surfaces as needed. Here's the robotics lab on the lower level, you know, a high-tech activity that's essentially happening outdoors. They've got the garage door open here. Ceramics, which is what down at that lower level adjacent to the entry. Again, here they've got, you know, garage door opening up to the terraced lecture and out to the landscape beyond, so completely visible to people passing by, you know. And one of those general purpose classrooms on the upstairs, you know, learning in a tree canopy.
This is just you'll see this is a crazy video that our drone pilot did, and the building is nestled into literally a encircling ring of oaks and sycamores, a 3D, 4D academic landscape that's just completely porous. You see the Corten and the Dasso. This is the lower entry terrace. As you come in, you'll see that transforming barn wall there and this terraced mixing space. We go up this set of terraces that are sort of freeform in terms of their programming. You arrive at the upper entry and you look into this collaboration courtyard, sort of like echoing what an exterior courtyard would be, but this is usable in all seasons and at night. And then we're going to come across here and fly right through 2 transformable walls through this central. When these walls are open, this is more of a breakout space. When these walls are closed, it's an enclosed classroom. This is one of those treehouse classrooms with down valley views and oak tree canopy views. I think that you can just see this is porous, and the drone drone guy is amazing. This is just the big outdoor space, kiln enclosure right there on the right. And then we're flying right in through this big canopy door. And this is just how it's used, making robots and stuff. Sometimes it's singular exploration, and sometimes it's just groups that looks like rough play. This lecture hall that can be used literally as a workspace or a breakout space, a robotics and exhibition space. This you'll see is the only crash, this maker space. And he's going to fly across here through. This is actually a gallery and exhibition space, and that's the photo studio on the right. Then we're going to fly out on the lower level and zoom back around to the upper level. There's literally horse hitching post on the edge of this project. This is the outdoor space that complements the physics studio. All of these courses are intended, the thinking about education is multidisciplinary, and that's how life, learning, work is multidisciplinary now. Now we're going back into the hub sort of collaboration courtyard. Flying through the painting and drawing studios, back into the hub courtyard. We're back at this entry terrace level. You can see this, just the visceral connection to the oak trees. Going down through this space, that's ceramics at the end. We're going to fly right up through there. So the video is disorienting, but as you all can imagine, that if you were walking around in here, you would, a human could easily navigate this space. You have visual connection for your own personal navigation at all times. And these, Ojai Valley views to die for. And we're available for, Matterport, yeah. Adam, take it away.
Hey everybody, that drone video is a pretty orchestrated, and as Ken said, it's maybe a little confusing where exactly you are. Matterport's great because you can kind of on your own go continue to check this out. And so along the bottom, if people have seen, there's these sort of setup views where you can, and they're labeled. So I'm at the south entry. We can go to the entry lower level, and so you can kind of more quickly get to some places. And again, the Matterport is great just because I can move forward a tiny bit, and if I want to look at this timber curtain wall facade, I can kind of spin around and just sort of take a look at how it works. It's got this sort of vertical component and depth and sort of a lot of lively, good wood and interest. You can jump up, I'll like just click on this middle level and up to there and sort of see this mid-level landing where you can even in the middle level of this, you're not even at the upper level yet, but there's a pathway connection and an outdoor space to these outdoor stone terrace walls. And we've seen these spaces, so I don't think we need to linger too much, but I think just the idea that you can kind of move through the space and pan, pause, and go see something. There's so many different kind of areas within this building that I think it's a good candidate for a kind of not a virtual architect tour to kind of be able to spend more time and check this out.
Just commenting on the tools, the Matterport is a great new one that we're really integrating into workflow, construction administration, and interaction with the client as well. Other tools like virtual reality and the digital modeling, that's an everyday tool for the office now. because we make the digital models already, we might as well use it for a virtual sort of interaction that is useful for the clients at times in order to make sure that they understand where the project is going and help us to guide the project for them. So to their goals. That's kind of coming into the finish line for the presentation part. And again, maybe this is a little synapse cooling image here relating to the trees and just the notion of repose, which happens a lot here as well. I think that students come here, even though it's an active beehive, they still come here to do some work in a quiet way. And that's a part of younger people, you know. I mean, you do see people writing their screenplay in Starbucks, but this, I think for teenagers, the notion of studying in a space like this is clear. So we're available for questions. And I saw there were quite a handful of them.
Yeah, wow, incredible. Thanks, Ken, and thanks, Blackbird team. Really, really cool presentation. I think everyone's wondering, who's your drone pilot again? Because I think we all want to hire them.
There are quite a few of them, but Alex Nye is the photographer and videographer and drone fellow that we've been lucky enough to work with. He's a great guy.
Great. Well, yeah, there's a few questions that came in, so I'll start us off with them, and then we can kind of have an organic conversation from there.
Yeah.
Someone asked if the classrooms were dedicated to a certain teacher or subject, or if there were flex spaces.
That was a big topic for the Thacher School, where they were headed with that. Historically, the teachers had camped out and posted up sort of permanent and long-term, and it was kind of territorial, which in a way had some romance and nostalgia to it, you know, but in another way meant like utilization and let's call it siloing of activities was fostered. So this building is intended to definitely work in favor of interaction. And the reports we hear is that everybody wants to be in this building. And the sort of like old school sense that there might be a conflict between one activity and the other hasn't proven to be a problem yet.
I love it. And that's, yeah, the 21st century right there. Karen Feeney had a follow-up question that kind of it highlights this a little bit more. And you know, Blackbird's known for engaging your stakeholders and your clients for the vision of the project. How were the students, if they were brought into this, but did they have kind of some vision in it and some say in how things were developed?
Elena? Adam?
Yes, definitely. So we worked closely with a variety of stakeholder groups at Thacher. Thacher sort of handled the one-on-one student interaction and reported back to us on feedback, but they had study focus groups, you know, that were asked certain specific questions for certain spaces. And then interestingly, for example, we actually hosted some Thacher classes at our office to share the building in virtual reality and, you know, sort of speak about where the design was headed. So we received feedback in that moment, kind of funny, interesting feedback requests for toasters, for example. But anyway, yes, a lot of faculty, staff, and students involved in the process.
I'd just add to that, this project, as Ken said, sort of originally was thinking about a renovation of the previous building. The Thacher School community determined it needed to know and think harder about it. So Thacher orchestrated a trip for faculty, administration, and the design team to Harvard University's Learning Environments for Tomorrow, which was a multi-day symposium group work that really I think opened everyone's eyes to the potential. There were consultants like consultants like Frank Locker, who does a lot of working with schools and faculty, thinking about the educational components and how those can be supported through their facilities, but often innovation needs to come through the teaching. And so I think Thacher was fully doing their part to get their community ready for a transformative project.
So there's a lot of interaction with the culture of the school in different ways, in literal workshops where we're trying to understand the culture, just in the same way that you would interact with and try to understand the site and terrain. And as well, I think it's a plug for a patient client who's willing to let the project simmer. You know, it wasn't done in a week. They needed to respond and work through ideas in an iterative, collaborative process.
Really valuable. I appreciate that take. And as someone who graduated from every phase of Santa Barbara's public school system, incredible education, but you do kind of feel like you're in a cinder block prison with some of our 1960s school design. So I'd be a big proponent for getting some more AIA design seminars with schools, and would love to collaborate more on that. So we definitely want more learning like this for our students. Matt Bousselet had a question about the living roof, which, by the way, was kind of what just made me fall in love with it from the beginning. Specifically, what the grow medium and depth was, what was planted mainly, and how it's holding up.
Susan, are you able to comment?
I'm here. Oh, yes. Thanks for asking. Ray alluded to the fact that I looked at the adjacent hillsides, and we used the native stone to create these, a basis or a structure to the green roof. It's 8 inches deep of a soil that's mostly a mineral soil. And that's important for, as you know, anybody who's grown a plant in a pot, the soil over time is sort of taken up by the plant. And if you have, in this case, mineral soil, it's pumice here, the roof can sustain plants over a very long period of time. And we use, this is just planted, and you can see the striations of the native stone, which goes in the same direction as the formations that you see on the adjacent mountainside. And it's all planted with native plants from the region, which is something the client had wanted, was all native plants. So both projects are all native. And actually the landscape is filled in quite a bit more than you can see here in the photo.
We have another question here. People loving the partition doors. Was there a specific manufacturer you worked with, or were they custom?
Elena?
Yeah, not Nikesh. Do you know specifically which doors were being asked about? So I think every moving part in the building was probably provided by a different manufacturer.
Gotcha.
So the barn doors that we saw, that was custom, and that was done by let's try and find a photo here. So those right there, that was actually done by the same company that installed the rest of the swing doors in the building. The large pivoting doors in the lecture hall, I'm trying to find a picture of that. So these down
the 6,000-pound millwork partition.
Yeah, exactly. So again, a collaborative effort. Taylor Siphon was involved in terms of making sure that the hinge point for these doors, was appropriately supported by the main building structure. And then the doors themselves, because there's casework in them. So it was a real collaborative effort. It's actually a welded steel frame. So the company that did steel and the rest of the building was involved with that. Then the casework company was involved with sort of outfitting it with the whiteboards. and the casework. And then we actually had a roller coaster designer help specify the wheels that are used underneath them. So again, like everything in the building, a lot of hands on deck to come up with a real great solution.
I think Ken touched on this briefly, but for the original dining hall, could you go a little bit more into what was the reasoning for keeping it preserved and not being able to renovate it? And then what's it being used for now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is actually a fairly historic structure. It's more than 100 years old.
Right.
And so adding to it was problematic. The spaces inside really just weren't big enough. And we realized that adaptively reusing this Hills building was going to transform it so much that it would just be sort of like a nostalgic and historic and cultural loss. And so it was a positive regroup once that decision was made. This Hills building that we're looking at has been adaptively reused. Upstairs, our administrative offices, and downstairs are classes and sort of congregating spaces for students. And then the reason, that's the main reason. Once we decided not to do that, there were a bunch of cascading positive impacts to the campus plan. So then the campus green could be formed. If you go to the next slide, actually, this sort of underutilized space where sort of athletic facilities creep into the cultural heart of campus was adjusted to make it a civic communal central space. So adaptive reuse of the historic structure, totally the right thing to do. And then keeping the new elements to contribute to the campus plan. And this image is just like, sometimes the diagram winds up getting built, and it really is good.
Can I just add, I think Thacher does have strong future plans for that Hills building as a continued vital part. So there's on the back side of all of that is a 1950s addition that was the kitchen, back of house kitchen for the Hills building that is slated at some point in the future to go away. And that's a real opportunity the school sees for creating even more new outdoor spaces in support of high functioning indoor spaces. So the repurposing of the Hills building to be probably a mix of student and academic supporting uses on the ground floor, administrative upstairs, and then a new set of outdoor spaces to the north to maintain this sort of heart of campus importance to this pergola and Hills building space.
We're all interested to see what comes of that. That's really interesting. We got one more question here from Cass saying how beautiful all the light coming into the building is and what a structural challenge that can be. So I think we have Jasper here from Thacher and Siphon. Is there any insight into kind of some of the structural challenges and hurdles that you went over?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for that question. I think the clear stories in both buildings are great features. I think in the dining commons they're particularly nice because it's a really good example of the architectural feature enabling a unique structural solution, and then kind of vice versa as well. So I'm pretty inspired by that, and I really like the way that it turned out.
Yeah, really cool to get those big views of the valley. We have about 5 more minutes, folks, before we move on. So are there any other kind of thoughts or questions while we got the whole team here?
I have a question to Anne. We really appreciate your collaboration and wisdom and guidance in lighting. Anne does really know her stuff and pushes the projects, I think. And are there any like core like comments or features or things that stick out for you?
Oh, yes, very much so. Thank you for that. I think what's really shown in the project a lot, and it's not just in the lighting, is that Blackbird is a particularly curious company. I mean, they ask a lot of questions, a lot, especially Ken, especially in the beginning. I mean, schematic design is really important to them, and it lasts a long time. I mean, they're constantly shaping and molding and changing and exploring, and you get into that mix of what it's turning out to be. And sometimes, you know, you think you're going down a certain road, and then all of a sudden you've got to take a left-hand turn with them, and you wait and see where that's going to go. And in the end, we're given really interesting challenges by this company, challenges that don't come along a whole lot. And you know, Ken was great about saying that this looks easy. It's anything but. That ceiling is really complicated. It's complicated to go into. Above it is a mass of, you know, you can imagine, of course, you've got your ductwork, you've got your pipes, you've got this and that, and we had to dodge all of those, and they dodged us as well. And trying to get that ceiling, you know, to come together, and it did. We ended up with a track system because we wanted to make sure we could focus or aim the fixtures. And we had to test out probably 4 different fixtures before we could settle on the simplest of lavalier fixtures because of how the head was connected to its support in relationship to the track, so that we could hit dead center of each one of those small pieces. So you start down a road, and then you just keep building. So it's a series of building blocks working on these 2 buildings. And I think the communication that they start early translates into the entire project.
Yeah, I love that consultative approach, Ken, asking all the questions. I mean, it really is making a space that's going to function for the clients and be a wonderful space to be in. Any other thoughts from our attendees while we got the team here? What is the plan for watering and irrigation on the garden roof? Where does the water go? What kind of impermeable base? So yeah, a little bit more living roof questions. I love them. Keep them coming.
What was the question? I'm not sure I understood the question.
The water and irrigation of the living roof and the impermeable base. Maybe that's a little too nitty gritty, but
it is definitely. We did go with a single manufacturer, so it was built up and guaranteed by them, which I think is a very good thing for an architect to do, is have the provider guarantee the waterproofing and so forth. And then the irrigation needed to be overhead. In Southern California, it pretty much needs to be overhead. Once again, going back to that mineral soil, drains very rapidly. So you need water for a very brief period of time, and so that you don't have too much runoff, because the roof could not be more permeable as far as the soils go. Does that answer the question?
I think that was a good one. I have a real quick follow-up. What's the fireproofing benefits of a living roof, if any? You can, you know, being in such a fire-prone areas.
That is a great question, because some fire departments think it's a great idea, and the city of Santa Barbara doesn't think it's a great idea. But as a person who lives under green roofs, I'm in a high fire hazard area. You can turn your sprinklers on for a little bit, and then right before you have to evacuate. So I think, and through personal experience, a green roof is actually very helpful from a fire standpoint. It could depend on what you plant, but it's only 8 inches of soil, so the plants never get very big. And It is irrigated on a regular basis. Another advantage of green roofs that people may not know about is the insulation, because it gets really hot in Ojai. It's also really good sound insulation, which you probably don't need so much here, but in other environments, That's very helpful.
It is a very fire resistant roof assembly, frankly, because it's massively insulating.
Ryan, we're not in the Nordic area where we're going to have a big grassy field on the living roof. You know, you're doing more fire tolerant, you know, native species. You do cactus and succulents, and that roof's never going to burn.
In this environment, that's really likely. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's the last of the questions that I see. One last question is just to we'll share a little bit more info on accessing the 3D scans. They're up on the tour website. So you really just click into the 3D scan and you can have access to it immediately. So definitely go check those out more. And thank you so much to the team at Blackbird and the site sponsors that helped make this possible. It really is exciting that that we got to tour this again, a project that would normally not be able to be toured on this. And we're so exciting that you shared with us how kids are learning nowadays. It really is great. So thank you so much to the team. Really appreciate all of you.
Thanks to all of you as well.
So 5 minutes from now, we'll have our final presentation of the day, the Santa Barbara Islamic Center. So we know this was a bit of a longer presentation combining these two buildings. So go stretch your legs, have a sip of water, drink a little iced tea, and we will see you back here at 2:30.